when someone comes up to me and asks, how do you know that God exists? I used to have all these sort of ideas and theories and like the evidences that you can give. But now I have a different take. I say, well, because atheists exist. Atheists prove God. And we're going to look at why they do and how they do it today. And just to note that these arguments probably won't work on atheists, but they're just reasons why I know that God exists through atheists. So look at a few proofs from atheism. What happened here? That's interesting. Hang on, I'll just stop recording this and I'll play it in a different way. There we go. That's interesting. Wait, like. Why is it black screen though? Wait, one more try. Okay, here we go. Okay, here we go. So the atheists believe in miracles. That's point number one. And I'm going to tell you why in a minute. Number two is atheists know things. I know God exists because atheists know things. Sounds a bit weird, but we're going to see why in a second. Atheists are logical. Atheists live moral lives. And atheists see God in nature. The 5 proofs from atheism that God is real and the Bible is true. So let's look at them one by one. Number one, atheists believe in miracles. Now they won't admit it, but they do. So the first miracle they believe is that everything came from nothing. This is the basic, really basic idea. I don't really know it much. I just got it off AI chat. So initially there was something called a singularity. This is according to the Big Bang Theory and the atheism idea of atheism. All matter and energy was contained in a single little point, and it was extremely dense and extremely hot. And then somehow that point expanded or exploded, and it formed particles like the fundamental parts of atoms and things like, I think they call them quarks and gluons and things like that. So the basic building blocks of atoms were created, and then electrons, protons, neutrons, and they formed atoms. Somehow with gravity was condensing everything and forming these elements. Gravity worked again. Gravity came from somewhere and formed stars and then galaxies, and then ultimately we had life on Earth and everything as we know it. This is the atheism, the origin of everything according to atheism. So where did all the matter and energy come from? You think of just the sun, our little sun alone, how much energy is being produced by that one sun, and it's one of innumerable suns. And all the weight, the mass of the Earth, the planets, are just a small part of infinite, or maybe not infinite, but innumerable amount of mass in the entire universe. So where did it all come from? And I mentioned laws. So we had gravitational laws that were necessary to form the early parts of planets and stars and things like that. Then we had nuclear forces, and these are the things that, when I was in university, I asked my science teacher, my physics teacher, he was talking about electrons and protons and atoms. I said, hang on a minute, you said that electrons are negatively charged, protons are positively charged, so you have an attraction between the forces. I can understand that. But in the nucleus of an atom, you have protons which are positively charged and neutrons which are negatively charged. How do they hold together? How does a positive charge and a positive charge, see on the diagram there, how do you have positive charges and positive charges being attracted to each other? Or neutral charges and positive charges. And they said, it's because of this force. I couldn't even understand what he said. But nowadays they call them the strong nuclear force. So that somewhere that had to come out of the Big Bang or the singularity. And then we have electromagnetic forces, which are negative charges being attracted to positive charges. So where did all these forces come from? Where did all the matter and energy come from? And the atheist will tell you it came from the singularity. You say, where did the singularity come from? You know what they say? I'm just going to play a short video clip that'll tell us what the atheists will say. All yours, brother.
Physicists are still working on the origin of the cosmos. Among them is Lawrence Krauss, whom I shall be talking to next week. Now, it is very mysterious how the universe came into being. It's a deeply mysterious and interesting question.
And can I just interrupt? It's an old question, a very old question. Thomas Aquinas in the 13th century was asking this same question. He said there must have been a time when no physical things existed, but something can't come from nothing. That was his view. It's just been repeated by us.
Something can come from nothing, and that's what physicists are now telling us. I could give you, you asked me to give you a layman's interpretation. It would be a very, very layman's interpretation. When you have matter and antimatter and you put them together, they cancel each other out and give rise to nothing. What Lawrence Krauss is now suggesting is that if you start with nothing, the process can go into reverse and produce matter and antimatter. The theory is still being worked out.
Well, there are many troubles with Richard's teachings, but a fundamental one is that he dumbs down God and he soups up nothing.
You can quickly respond to that.
You can dispute exactly what's meant by nothing, but whatever it is, it's very, very simple. And why is that funny?
Well, I think it's a bit funny to be trying to define nothing.
Okay. So these guys, they think that everything came from nothing. And of course the audience is laughing because they're saying, what are you talking about? Nothing. How can nothing create something or anything? The first law of thermodynamics states that energy can neither be created nor destroyed. So in order to get something from nothing, that something has to be created. Scientists recognize this, but they're saying it's created from nothing, but their own law says it can't be created. So they need a miracle. Atheism needs a miracle, and atheists believe in miracles. We as Christians, we understand through faith that the worlds were framed by the word of God, so that things which are seen are not made of things which do appear. We believe in miracles too. Only which makes more sense? God created everything or nothing created everything? Our view doesn't make more sense, it's the only one that makes sense, because nothing giving rise to everything is ridiculous. In Education, page 99, we read, the same power that upholds nature is working also on man. The same great laws that guide alike the star and the atom control human life. We believe there are natural laws in our universe because God created them like that. The atheist believes that there are laws in the universe that came from nothing. So atheists believe in a miraculous origin of all matter, energy, and natural laws. They just don't attribute it to God. So atheists believe in miracles. The second thing they believe, the second miracle they believe, is that there was an eternal first cause. It's related to the everything comes from nothing argument, but it's a little bit deeper. So the first cause, the argument goes like this. Everything that begins to exist has a cause. Right? So if something has a beginning, something must have caused it. The universe began to exist, they tell us. Therefore, the universe has a cause. Now, the atheists won't argue with this. Most of them. Some of them will, but most of them won't. But yeah, we can look at what do they call it, red light in the universe, and we can deduce that the universe is expanding, therefore it must have had a point of origin, therefore the universe had a cause. And they say, oh, the sun is slowly running out of energy, or the energy is being changed into unusable form. The sun is dying, in other words. If the universe was eternal, then the sun would have died out in an eternity ago, but it's still here. So they tell us, the atheists tell us, that the universe is around 14 billion years old. So it had a start, it had a beginning, right? And therefore it had a cause. Now what caused the universe? Now we look at a few things. Number one, it must be immaterial. It can't come from inside the universe, right? It has to be outside the universe to create the universe. If it came from inside the universe would already be created. Does that make sense? Second, it must be outside space. Now, I'm not too sure about this one. I don't know about the whole space thing, but they tell it that. The scientists tell us that there is such thing as physical space. For me, space is just nothing, but okay, we'll go with what they say, right? They say that space was created when the universe was created. Therefore, like matter, the cause of the universe can't exist inside space, or already have been. Space would have already been created before it was created. It makes no sense. So the thing that created the thing that caused the universe must be in another dimension, if you like. Must be outside of the space that we have. And another one, they say time was created when the universe began. I don't know about that, but I'm just going by what they say. This is what they postulate. So if time was created at the beginning of the universe, then just like matter and just like space, whatever caused the universe must have existed outside of time, right? If time was created, whatever created it can't have existed within the thing that it already created. Does that make sense? I don't know if I'm saying it right, but it must exist outside of time. Now, some atheists will say, oh yeah, but look, we have the time in the universe, but then whatever caused the universe could have existed in another time zone, if you like. Not the time zone of our universe, but in the time zone of another universe. I'm thinking, okay, so if you're saying that the cause of the universe existed in time, then if you keep going backwards 1 million years, 10 million years, all the way back to zero in that time zone, then that means the cause had a beginning. And if it had a beginning, then itself it must have had a first cause. So that makes no sense. It must exist outside of time, if time is a real thing. It must exist outside of time, and in other words, it must be eternal. So 3 things here to start with. It must be not made of matter or energy or anything inside this universe. It has to be immaterial. It must be in another dimension. Yeah, it's not inside the space that it created. It can't exist inside the space it created. And it must be eternal. If it created time, it can't be already in time. And fourthly, it must be extremely powerful. All the matter that's out in the universe, all the stars and the number of atoms, everything came from this first cause. It must be immensely powerful. And finally, it must have intelligence. And this is where they'll say, hold up, they don't like this one. It's a little bit hard to explain, but if you think about it, their idea is, okay, maybe you had a cause that was eternal, and then sometime or at some point, that cause caused the universe. But they don't understand that if you have an eternal cause, then the effect must be eternal. I think about this is the only way I can explain it. I'm not a philosopher, so I'm a bit hazy on how to explain it, but think of it like this. Say we have a glass of ice. Something caused the water to turn to ice. Right? So the atheist says, okay, maybe we had an eternal cause. That's the environment around the water is 0 degrees. When did that water turn to ice? If the environment around the water was 0 degrees from eternity, when did it turn to ice? An eternity ago, right? There wasn't a point when the water just said, okay, I'm going to go turn to ice now. If the environment was always 0 degrees, the water would always be ice. But if our universe wasn't always existing. There had to be a point when the universe went from non-existing to existing. And so they say, this is what the philosophers say, that the only thing that can create a change that can create a result from an eternal effect is a choice. The only thing that can turn the water to ice without it being 0 degrees for eternity, the only way for the environment to turn to 0 is by a choice, and a choice entails intelligence. So that, anyway, you'll have to study it yourself. It's called the cosmological argument. You can look into it. But the last one they don't agree with. They say, nah, we don't believe in a personal being. But they believe in all these other ones, mostly. So what is immaterial, another dimension, eternal, and extremely powerful? Nothing in our universe. So they believe in a supernatural, interdimensional, eternal, extremely powerful first cause. They just won't accept it having intelligence, because that would mean it could be a personal being like God. But in any case, they believe in the supernatural. Atheists believe in an eternal first cause. They believe in miracles, just like us. They believe in life, that life comes from non-life. You heard that one before? They call it abiogenesis. My brother Renato is going to play us another clip here in a second.
So you have no idea how it started?
No, nor has anybody.
Nor has anyone else. What do you think is the possibility that intelligent design might turn out to be the answer to some issues in genetics or in evolution?
It could come about in the following way. It could be that at some earlier time, somewhere in the universe, a civilization evolved by probably some kind of Darwinian means to a very, very high level of technology, and designed a form of life that they seeded onto perhaps this planet. Now, that is a possibility, and an intriguing possibility. And I suppose it's possible that you might find evidence for that if you look at the details of biochemistry, molecular biology. You might find a signature of some sort of designer.
Wait a second. Richard Dawkins thought intelligent design might be a legitimate pursuit?
And that designer could well be a higher intelligence from elsewhere in the universe.
Well,
but that higher intelligence would itself have had to have come about by some explicable or ultimately explicable process. It couldn't have just jumped into existence spontaneously. That's the point.
So Professor Dawkins was not against intelligent design, just certain types of designers, such as God.
Expelled. No intelligence allowed. Available now on DVD and Blu-ray.
So can you see how crazy they get? So, I don't want to believe in God that created life from non-life, so I'm going to throw my reasoning to the wind and say aliens made life on Earth. So that's the absurdity of atheism. It's not because he says, it's quite possible that intelligent design created life on Earth, but the thing is they don't want to accept the only intelligent designer that makes any sense. Play the next clip, please, brother.
In the 19th century, the theory of abiogenesis was widely accepted, much like evolution is today. Charles Darwin strongly promoted this idea that life was generated by non-life. However, Louis Pasteur, a French microbiologist and believer in biblical creation, made a startling discovery. In the early 1860s, he conducted experiments comparing organic material that was directly exposed to air to organic material that was not directly exposed to air. And the result? Nothing grew in the vessels that were not directly exposed to air and airborne microbes. This confirmed biogenesis, meaning life always comes from life. Pasteur declared, "Never will the doctrine of spontaneous generation recover from the mortal blow struck by this simple experiment." His studies led to the practices of sterilization and pasteurization, particularly in the areas of medicine and food preparation.
All right. So he said, Louis Pasteur there said, he says, never will spontaneous generation recover from this blow, from the serious blow by this simple experiment. But the thing is that all the atheists now believe in spontaneous generation. They believe in life coming from non-life. So in effect, we've gone backwards into the Dark Ages. Now you might wonder what's spontaneous generation. Let's have a little bit more of a description. I just asked AI chat again what it is. It's easy. So let's have a read. Spontaneous generation, also known as abiogenesis, that's a key word. Remember, abiogenesis, that's what the atheists believe, was a once prevailing belief that certain forms of life could rise spontaneously from non-living matter under specific conditions. Spontaneous generation had a long history and was a commonly accepted idea in ancient times and throughout much of the Middle Ages. Examples of spontaneous generation beliefs included the belief that maggots would spontaneously generate from decaying meat, or that mice would arise from a mixture of wheat and sweaty underwear. These people are crazy, man. But the atheists believe in a supernatural origin of life. They believe that, maybe they don't believe that maggots come out of meat or that mice come out of undies, but they believe that life comes from non-life. They just don't accept it to be God. And actually, I'm just going to go back a second there. It's actually a law of nature. This is a scientific law. Life can only come from other living organisms and does not spontaneously generate from non-living matter. There's a scientific law that says abiogenesis doesn't happen. You know what atheists need? They need a miracle. They need a miracle, and they believe in miracles. The miracle is that life comes from non-life. We believe it. We believe God created, well, no, we don't believe that life came from non-life. We believe God created life. But atheists believe crazy theories like aliens came and planted life on Earth, or that life just spontaneously generated contrary to the known laws of science. So atheists believe in miracles. Now you ask, how does atheists believing in miracles prove that God exists? Okay, so I've just got a little rundown here. Atheists believe in miracles, therefore, miracles are acceptable explanations for scientific theory, right? So they believe in abiogenesis, a miracle. They believe that everything came from nothing, a miracle. And they call them scientific theories. So miracles are scientific, according to the atheist. Therefore, it is scientific to believe that God is the only explanation for the origin of all matter, energy, natural laws, and forces, the first cause of the universe, and the origin of life. God is science. Atheism proves God. The proof number 2, atheists know things. This is an interesting one. They know things, and that proves that God exists. Now, in the atheist's worldview, they have no foundation for their knowledge. They know things though, right? You know, atheists are very smart. A lot of them are very, very intelligent. But ultimately, they have no foundation for that knowledge, by the way. Okay, so say you're in the blue car and you come to an intersection and there's a green car coming the other way. You want to turn right. But the green car wants to go straight. Who gives way? The blue car gives way, right? Of course. But what if it's really foggy and you didn't see that the green car was actually at a stop sign? So who gives way? The green car now, right? So there's something that you didn't know and it completely contradicted what you did know. You see that? And it can have disastrous results. The new information revealed that you were completely wrong in what you thought you knew. Now, we put it like this, another way. Say you know 1% of all the information that's available in the universe. 1% of everything that there is to know, you know 1%. But could the 99% that you don't know contradict that 1% that you do know? Of course, just like the car and the stop sign. You might not see something, and ultimately, what you think you know is completely wrong. So how does an atheist know anything? If the 1% that he does know could be completely contradicted by the 99% he doesn't know, he could be completely wrong about everything that he thinks he knows. With an atheist worldview, you can't know anything for certain. You could be in the Matrix, you could be in a video game, there could be information out there that contradicts everything that you assume that you know. So the only way to know anything for certain is to know 100% of everything, right? If you know 100% of everything, then you will know for certain that what you know is true. But does anyone know 100% of anything? But everyone knows someone who does. Right? God knows 100% of everything. The Christian has a revelation from the God who knows everything. The Christian can know for certain, therefore, that his reality is the ultimate reality. The Christian can know things with certainty. The atheist worldview can know nothing for certain. Proverbs 1:7 says, "The fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge." Now, if we really think about this verse, where do you begin to gain knowledge? Yeah, when you commit your heart to God, right? When you put God in your mind and you understand the world out there through the lens of God, through the Bible, then you can begin to know knowledge. The fear of the Lord, or reverence or worship of God, allows you to begin to have knowledge. If you reject the idea of God, you can't even begin to know anything. Psalm 36:9 says, "For with thee is the fountain of life. In thy light shall we see light." Only in the light of God can we make sense of the world. Without God, it's absurdity. Absurdity. Atheism is absurdity. But atheists know things. According to their worldview, they can't know anything. But they do. So how does it prove God? They don't live as though their worldview is true. They don't live like that. They don't say, "Oh, I might be in the Matrix, so I'm going to go jump off a building," or something like that. They don't believe that they're in a video game. They operate in their life as though they can know things for certain. They don't believe their own worldview. They even trust their lives to things that they know will save them. Like they put the seatbelt on, right? If they weren't sure, say, "Oh, maybe that seatbelt won't even work." If they operated like that and say, "Oh, maybe that plane will drop out of the sky, so I'm not going to jump on the airplane." They don't live like that. They know things for certain. They know things and trust things. Therefore, they don't believe their own worldview. They know that God exists. Okay, number 3. Atheists use reason and logic. So just like knowledge, they have no foundation to know anything. They also have no foundation to being able to reason. This is a neuron from the schematic of a neuron from your brain. Now, how it operates is that these little things up here, they're called dendrites. You probably already know this. Now, they can contain thousands of connections from other neurons. And all those neurons connecting to that dendrite are capable of sending an electrical impulse. Now, when enough electrical impulses arrive at the dendrites on this neuron, the cell body here creates its own electrical impulse, and boom, there's a pulse. An electrical impulse runs down the axons, out onto the axon terminals, and connects with other neurons, and that's how a thought happens. That's how your brain operates, through electrical and chemical impulse. So when it connects with another neuron, the electrical signal down here will change to a chemical signal. It'll cause chemicals to be released, and those chemicals will interact with another neuron, and that will cause it will change to an electrical signal, and so on. So all your brain is chemical and electrical reactions, connections. That's all it is, physically speaking. Now, if you think about the whole universe just arising out of chance, okay, first we had the singularity, then we had the atoms, and then we had the stars and planets and galaxies, and ultimately we got life. Everything is just basic matter, right? We're just highly developed meat machines walking around operating just on the chemical and electrical reactions that happen in our brain. We don't have a will, actually, they say. We don't have a will. We're just operating upon our DNA and upon the reactions. So if the whole system that we live in arose out of sheer chance, then we have no reliability, no reason to trust in the reliability of our reasoning. How do you know that, say, Brother Joe's chemical reactions are more true than my chemical reactions. They're just chemical reactions, right? Can you attribute one chemical reaction? Say you have, what have I got? Oh, I don't have any examples. The common examples use a bottle of Coke is fizzing. So that's a chemical reaction. The gases in the Coke are being changed. The chemicals in the Coke are being changed to a gas through the release of pressure. So can a Coke undergoing a chemical reaction be any more true than a Sprite undergoing a chemical reaction? That's ridiculous, right? Chemical reactions they don't have the capacity for reasoning. They don't determine truth or not. Something else determines truth, and that's your mind. Your mind is not just a physical process that happens. You were created by God with the capacity for reasoning. Okay, so this is what you can ask an atheist. If they say, no, I trust my reasoning, even though it's evolved by chance and it is just a chemical reaction, I have no free will, but I still trust it. I say, oh, okay, do you trust your reasoning? I say, yes, I trust my reasoning. Do people with invalid reasoning exist? Like there's people in insane asylums and people that have really got damaged brains. They have invalid reasoning. How do you know your reasoning is valid? And the atheist will say, well, because I compare it to other people, all the experts. And he said, well, did you use your reasoning to compare your reasoning with other people? So yeah. Oh, wait a minute. How do you know your reasoning's valid? It's a vicious circle. He asks him if his reasoning is valid. He says yes, but then he uses his reasoning to determine his reasoning is valid. It's circular reasoning. So atheists have no foundation for their having valid reasoning. Christians do. We were created, or atheists were created as well, with the capacity to reason, the capacity to learn and know truth. So they use circular reasoning. Now the funny thing is, atheists hate circular reasoning. Here's a list of logical fallacies, the ad hominem, straw man, circular reasoning, all the others. If you use circular reasoning in an argument, the atheist will call you out and he'll criticize you and say, hey, you can't use circular reasoning. That's a logical fallacy. You say, wait a minute. Where did logic come from? Laws of logic, here are some of them. Laws of identity, the laws of non-contradiction, the laws of exclusion, and law of rational inference. So the laws of two things. We have logical fallacies and the laws of logic. They are abstract laws of life. The law of non-contradiction, I'll give you an example. Law of non-contradiction can't say, my laptop is sitting on the podium, but my laptop is... See, it's a contradiction. That's a logical impossibility. You can't contradict the law of non-contradiction. And atheists will agree. They say, no, that's ridiculous. You can't do that. So, in a random, purposeless, material universe, where do you get laws of logic? Where do the laws of logic come from? How come I can't say that the computer is sitting on the podium, but it's not sitting on the podium? How come I can't say that? You know what the atheist will say? He says, oh, it's consensus. If enough people will agree that you can't say that, then we'll say that you can't say that. All right, so if enough people agree that I can say that, can I say it now? If enough people agree that I can violate the laws of logic, does that make it logical? He said, no. The laws of logic are universal and they're changeless. They're immaterial, universal, changeless laws. God is logical. He designed man to reflect his character, and therefore God created man with a capacity to understand and adhere to the laws of logic. The atheist worldview has no foundation for the reliability of reason or the existence of the laws of logic. Atheists are logical though, right? So how does an atheist worldview having no foundation for their reasoning or logic prove that God exists? It's because again, atheists don't believe their own worldview. They don't live as though their reasoning is unreliable. They trust their reasoning. They adhere to laws of logic. They don't say, oh no, purposeless, changeless, random universe, there's no point to having laws of logic. They believe the laws of logic even though they can't account from where they came from. How can a material universe give rise to immaterial, changeless, and universal laws? It cannot. But they don't believe it either. All right, the fourth proof, second to last. The fourth proof is atheists live moral lives. Atheists have no foundation for their morality, though. If you have a completely random, accidental universe, material universe, how do you get morality? How do you say it's wrong to kill your brother? Why is that wrong? If in an evolutionary environment, isn't it just survival of the fittest? Yeah, I'm going to kill my brother, I'm going to get ahead, I'm going to take his riches, take his wife, whatever, anything you want. But they don't believe that. Now they might say to you, oh, it's consensus. No, society decides that something is wrong, therefore it's wrong. All right, how'd that go for Germany? Yeah? The whole society decided that they should exterminate Jews. Does that make exterminating Jews right now? What if all society decided and came to a consensus that rape is good? Does that make rape good? No. They don't understand that morality is outside of this material universe. It comes from something else. Now, we have in New Zealand, this is going to freak you out. In New Zealand, the age of consent, you know what that is? Age of consent? Yeah, okay. I don't have to spell it out. So it's 16 in New Zealand. In Peru, it's 14. Japan, only just this year, they only just raised the age of consent from 13 up to 16. And I don't know, but as of 2021 in the Philippines, it was 12. Now, does that make it good? A little girl at 12 years old, because society says it's good, does that make it right? It's absolute madness. But that's what they believe. The atheists, they say, no, it's a consensus. Morality is what we decide it is. It's not. You know, in America, most states in America, it's 18. They look at New Zealand as though we are the animals. And we are, really. So morality is not of consensus. Moral laws are immaterial, universal, changeless laws. God is morally good. He designed man to reflect his character, and therefore man was created with the capacity to understand and adhere to the laws of morality. So atheists live moral lives. How does that prove? God, again, they don't believe their own worldview. They don't believe in survival for the fittest. They don't go out and just kill and steal and destroy for their own benefit. They don't believe, like Germany, if the whole society decides that something is correct, that it's necessarily correct. They believe in objective morality, and they adhere to moral laws, and they'll criticize you if you violate those moral laws or human rights or what have you. But a purely material, random universe cannot give rise to immaterial, universal laws. So atheists prove by their own lives that God exists. Romans 2:14-15, look at this. For the Gentiles, in other words, atheists, which have not the law, do by nature the things contained in the law. These, having not the law, are a law unto themselves, which show the work of the law written where? In their hearts. Their conscience also bearing witness in their thoughts, the mean, while accusing or else excusing one another. They have the law of God, the moral law of God in their hearts. They know what's right and wrong. You can't go to an atheist and say, oh, is morality subjective or relative? They'll say, no. Well, in their hearts, they'll say, no, I know what's right and wrong. Because God put it in their hearts and they prove it by their lives. So number 5, atheists see God in nature. This is the last one. Woo. This is a book called Richard Dawkins. He was the guy that thought nothing created everything at the start. Biology is the study of complicated things that give the appearance of having been designed for a purpose. So they look at nature and they say, oh yeah, it looks like it's designed. It looks like it has purpose. Here's another book, Design and Nature. Over time, I would develop a new understanding of evolutionary phenomena and the oneness of nature that would reveal how design emerges. How what emerges? Design emerges without an intelligent designer. So they admit and they know, they recognize that design is in nature, but what do they want to do? Remove God, remove the designer. Biologist argues there is design in nature. We'll just read this last part. He argues that science itself, including evolutionary biology, is predicated on the idea of design, the correlation of structure with function that lies at the heart of the molecular nature of life. They believe in design. In a random, accidental, material universe, design would not be observable. Actually, if you think about it, I won't give you an example because I'll ruin it. If you have random events occurring in a system, those random events, even though the system might have been ordered to start with, it's going to eventually increase in disorder. You know what I mean? So if you, say you have like a Scrabble puzzle and it spells out words to start with. There's order there. Now you randomly are going to take letters out of that Scrabble puzzle and put in other letters at random. Now are you going to spell more words, or is there going to be more information, or is it going to go to disorder? Yeah, exactly. Absurdity. So over time, randomness creates disorder. And actually, wouldn't you know, this is the second law of thermodynamics. In an isolated system, total entropy, that's disorder, will increase over time. It's a scientific principle that things don't get more complicated, they get more disordered. So what do atheists need in order for their worldview to be established, for design to come from nowhere? They need a miracle. They need the second law of thermodynamics to be superseded by their own miracle. Look, they say, oh, you have a very, very, very simple life form at the start. And then suddenly it slowly got more complicated and complicated until we get to the top. We have mammals and, oh, we're so wonderfully designed, but I don't believe in a designer. Oh, we have got one more clip. This is, oh, wait long. Okay.
Inside your ear, sounds set off a complex chain of events.
It's inside your
They
ear.
enter as pressure waves, which push, pull your eardrum, making it vibrate.
Well, actually, brother, we might
On the
just
other
skip that,
side
brother.
of the eardrum,
We don't have
these
time, really.
vibrations set
Sorry.
a series of bones.
You can watch it on YouTube, how the ear works. Basically, I was just showing you the amazing design of the human ear. Nobody can study the stars, the human body, the complexity, diversity, beauty, and harmony of the natural world and not marvel at the wonder of creation. Do a course in anatomy and you'll say, how can anyone be an atheist? In an atheist worldview, the natural world would not exist as we see it. The second law of thermodynamics, right? They need a miracle. It's an impossibility that nature could be as it is. They see nature and they know God. They do. They don't like to admit it, but they know God. And the Bible says exactly this. The heavens declare the glory of God. The firmament showeth his handiwork. Yeah? So the universe declares that God exists. Day unto day uttereth speech, and night unto night showeth knowledge. That means it's continually pressing upon the unbeliever that God exists. It's continually speaking to him. There is no speech nor language where their voice is not heard. All men everywhere have heard that God exists by looking at nature. The invisible things of him from the creation of the world are clearly seen, being understood by the things that are made, even his eternal power and Godhead. They know God exists. God has revealed himself to us in his word and in the works of creation. Through the volumes of inspiration in the book of nature, we are to obtain a knowledge of God. That's how God has revealed himself, through the word and through nature. And the atheists, they might not like to have the Bible, but they will certainly go out inside and see the nature, and they will see God and clearly understand that he exists, even his divine power and Godhead. Upon all created things is seen the impress of the deity. Nature testifies of God. The susceptible mind brought into contact with the miracle and mystery of the universe cannot but recognize the working of infinite power. They can't not recognize the working of infinite power. Atheists know God exists. So how does an atheist worldview, having no foundation for design, complexity, beauty, harmony, and diversity, prove God? How do they do it? They don't believe their own worldview. They don't believe that nature arose out of random chance. They might say it, they might profess it, but they don't, in their heart of hearts, they don't believe it. They wonder at the work, the marvel of nature. They appreciate the beauty, the infinite complexity, and that it can't arise from a completely random universe. They appreciate it. They intuitively know that creation speaks of the Creator. So atheism proves God. Number one, they believe in miracles. Number two, they know things. Number three, they're logical. Number four, they live moral lives. And number five, they see God and nature and they know Him. So ultimately, how does atheism prove God? Because atheists are not atheists. They believe God. They know God. But what did they do with that knowledge? The wrath of God is revealed from heaven against all ungodliness and unrighteousness of men who suppress the truth in unrighteousness, because that which may be known of God is manifest in them. For God has showed it unto them. For the invisible things of Him from the creation of the world are clearly seen, being understood by the things that are made, even His eternal power and Godhead, so that they are without excuse. They hold down this knowledge. They push it to the back of their minds, to the bottom of their hearts. They say, I don't want to believe in a creator. But they know that there is a creator. Romans 12:3, for I say through the grace given unto me that to every man that is among you, not to think of himself more highly than he ought to think, but to think soberly, according as God has dealt to every man the measure of faith. All atheists have faith. All atheists believe in God. All atheists are not atheists. John 1:9 says, that was the true light, that's Christ, which lighteth every man that cometh into the world. Every man has an experience with God. And you might say, oh, what about the heathen tribes? Them too. What about the young baby? Yeah, they experience God too. Now, the young baby's not held accountable because of its cognitive abilities, but it still experiences God. Everyone that comes into the world is lighted by Jesus Christ. Through nature and revelation, through His providence, and by the influence of His Spirit, God speaks to us. By an agency as unseen as the wind, Christ is constantly working upon the heart. Little by little, perhaps unconsciously to the receiver, impressions are made that tend to draw the soul to Christ. Constantly, God is making an impression upon the unbeliever, upon the atheists, drawing him to Jesus Christ. But the atheists don't believe in God. Why is that? Because they tell themselves, not because God doesn't exist, but because they tell themselves there is no God. They've convinced themselves there is no God. Now the Bible says that because they do this, they are fools. They are fools for doing it. It's not saying that atheists are stupid, atheists are unintelligent. No, they're very intelligent. It's saying you're making an incredibly foolish decision to suppress the truth about God that you know He exists. Atheists are fools when it comes to God. But wait, atheists are not the only ones to deny God. Did you know that? Yeah, so before we start railing on the atheists, let's turn our eyes inward. Hebrews 3:12 and 13 says, take heed, brethren, lest there be in you. Now he said, brethren, that's people of God, right? Take heed, brethren, lest there be in you an evil heart of unbelief and departing from the living God. But exhort one another daily while it is called today, lest any of you be hardened through the deceitfulness of sins, unless you will become like the atheists and suppress the truth that you know and deny that God exists. For men shall be lovers of their own selves, having a form of godliness, but denying the power thereof. From such turn away. They profess that they know God, but in works they deny Him, being abominable and disobedient, and unto every good work reprobate. This is the Christians, brethren. This is you and me. We profess that we know God, but do we deny Him? Are we, like the atheist, a fool and saying in our hearts, there is no God? Atheists know that God exists. They have an abundant evidence for His love, character, and law, but they suppress that knowledge that they have and enter into utter darkness. Now, we as Christians, we have an even greater knowledge. We have the Bible, a direct revelation from God Himself, and even more than that, as Adventists, we have the Spirit of prophecy, further revelation of the truth of God. We have so much greater light. How much more accountable are we than atheists for not suppressing the light that we have, for living up to the light that Jesus has given us? This is an old verse that my mama and my dad had hanging on the wall of their home. I knew it from when I was a little kid, and I always sing it whenever I go into the kitchen, I think it was. Choose you this day whom you will serve, but as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. Joshua 24:15. What will we choose? Will we choose foolishness and suppress the light that God has given us? Or will we choose righteousness and accept all that Jesus Christ reveals? Don't be like the atheists and say, no, despite all the evidence and all the arguments for God's existence, I'm going to ignore it. No, we can't be like that. We have to, when we read something in the Word of God, we have to accept it and obey it. That's all we can do. Choose who we will serve. The gods that are on the other side of the river that your fathers served, or God of the universe, the creator that all men know exists.